It's easy to think modern technology has always been just that, modern. But the truth is, it's not. From ancient dental fillings to the oldest wine, today we're about to show you 7 everyday items invented long ago. Items that you probably still use every day without even realizing it. Number 7. Ancient dental fillings. Well, having a dental procedure is painful enough, but it must have been even worse before the invention of drills and painkillers. Long before these inventions, however, it looks like people were already trying to repair damaged teeth in ways that sound almost unbearable now. The history of dental fillings reaches back far earlier than most people would ever guess. One of the earliest discoveries came from a Neolithic graveyard in Pakistan, where skulls dated to around 7000 BC showed drilled teeth. Some experts believe those holes may not have been caused by tooth decay at all, but by spiritual practices, possibly an attempt to release evil spirits from the body. Even so, the idea of someone drilling into a human tooth that early is hard to ignore. Then the story becomes even more remarkable in Italy. At Riparo Fredian in northern Tuscany, archaeologists found teeth from 6 individuals dating between 13,000 and 12,740 years ago. 2 incisors showed clear marks left by a pointed stone tool, likely used to widen cavities and scrape away decayed tissue. After that, the tooth seems to have been packed with bitumen, a natural tar also used in the Ice Age to waterproof baskets and pots. Researchers even found traces of plant fibers and hair inside the material, which is pretty amazing. Mana Stefano Bonazzi of the University of Bologna said this may not have been a one-time experiment, but part of a wider dental tradition among late Stone Age foragers. Later civilizations pushed the idea further. Between 166 and 201 AD, the Etruscans and Romans used gold fillings and even made artificial crowns. Chinese medical texts from around 700 AD mention silver paste, while Egyptian and Greek records also describe early efforts to treat teeth. Over time, people tried plenty of things like resin, wood, cork, stone chips, tin, and eventually amalgam in the 19th century. Number 6. The world's oldest wine. Winemaking is not something new. We humans have been doing it for far longer than most people realize, way long before modern vineyards and glass bottles. People were already fermenting grapes and turning them into something that clearly meant more than just a drink. The strongest evidence comes from Georgia, about 50 kilometers south of Tbilisi, at 2 Neolithic sites called Gadakrili Gora and Shulaveris Gora. There, scientists uncovered pottery fragments dating back to around 5,980 BC, nearly 8,000 years ago. Inside 8 of those jars, researchers found chemical traces of wine. Some of the pottery even carried images of grape clusters and a man dancing, which says a lot about how wine was already tied to celebration and daily life. Stephen Batiuk from the University of Toronto described it as the earliest known example of domesticating wild Eurasian grapevines specifically for winemaking. And it was. What makes it even more striking is that the method hasn't completely disappeared. While in Georgia, large clay vessels called cuvevri are still used today. Grapes are crushed, then fermented with their skins, stems, and seeds all together, almost exactly how those ancient jars suggest it was done thousands of years ago. Before this discovery, the oldest known wine evidence came from the Zagros Mountains in Iran, dated between 5,400 and 5,000 BC. A 6,000-year-old wine press found in Armenia in 2011 pushed the timeline even further back. And in China, a different kind of early alcohol, made from rice, honey, and fruit, dates to around 7,000 BC. Then there's something even stranger. In Carmona, southern Spain, A Roman tomb discovered in 2019 revealed a glass urn filled with about 5 liters of reddish liquid. José Rafael Ruiz Arrebola from the University of Córdoba confirmed it was 2,000 years old wine, preserved alongside the cremated remains of a man named Sanicio. Not exactly the kind of vintage anyone would rush to taste. Number 5. Ancient ice skates. Ice skating is one of those things that feels modern, almost recreational by nature. But its roots go back thousands of years, and they weren't about fun at all. They were about survival. Some of the earliest evidence points to Finland around 3000 BC, nearly 5,000 years ago. Researchers like Federico Formenti from the University of Oxford studied replicas of ancient bone skates and found something fascinating. In a landscape filled with frozen lakes, skating wasn't a novelty, it was efficient. People could save up to 10% of their energy compared to walking. That meant covering nearly 20 kilometers in a single winter day, which could easily be the difference between isolation and connection. These skates were nothing like the polished blades seen today. They were made from animal bones, often horses or oxen, with holes carved at each end so leather straps could secure them to footwear. Movement wasn't smooth or graceful. People used wooden poles to push themselves forward, gliding in short, controlled motions rather than skating in strides. A much later example was uncovered in Přerov, in the Czech Republic, during a dig beneath a house. Researchers from the Comenius Museum, including archaeologist Zdeněk Schenk, dated the skate to around the late 10th or early 11th century. The area once held a fortress linked to Polish King Bolesław the Brave, so it's possible the skate belonged to his soldiers. It even had a carved nose to cut through ice and snow, along with holes for straps. Similar bone skates have been found across Sweden, the UK, and even in Xinjiang, China, where 3,500-year-old versions made from oxen and horse bones were discovered. Only in the 13th century did metal blades appear, finally allowing the smooth motion we recognize today. Before that, every glide came with effort, purpose, and cold determination. Number 4. The oldest perfume factory. So, who actually invented perfume? Well, the honest answer is no single person or civilization. It didn't appear overnight. It slowly took shape across Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia, and beyond, long before it ever reached the glass bottles people recognize today. One of the earliest names we actually know is Taputi Belatakalem, a Mesopotamian woman from around 1200 BCE. Her title meant overseer of the palace, and she wasn't just mixing scents casually. She worked with flowers, oil, myrrh, and balsam, using filtration and distillation techniques that feel super precise for something written more than 3,000 years ago. Alongside her was another perfumer named Ninu, though much of her name has been lost to time. But the story doesn't really settle on a single inventor. It shifts to Cyprus, around 2000 BCE, where something far more organized was discovered. In 2003, Italian archaeologist Maria Rosaria Belgiorno uncovered what is now considered the oldest perfume factory at Pyrgos Mavroraki. Now, this wasn't a small workshop. It was a full production site, complete with basins, funnels, and containers designed for large-scale processing. Chemical analysis showed olive oil being used as a base, remixed with local plants like lavender, rosemary, myrtle, anise, and laurel. 14 different perfumes were identified there, which suggests this wasn't experimentation. It was the industry. Egypt followed its own path with Kai-Fi, a blend recorded as early as 1500 BCE on the Ebers Papyrus, later detailed in temple inscriptions at Edfu and Philae. Ingredients like honey, wine, frankincense, and myrrh were combined slowly, often alongside ritual recitations. What stands out is how intentional all of this was. These weren't random mixtures. People were already chasing something specific, something meaningful in scent, thousands of years before modern chemistry ever stepped in. Number 3. Hand grenades. For years, those small ceramic spheres found across Byzantine battle sites didn't look like weapons at all. They were easy to misunderstand. Rounded, sometimes cone-shaped, with narrow openings at the top. They looked more like containers for oil, perfume, or medicine than anything dangerous. But that assumption didn't hold up. When researchers started testing the residue inside them, the results told a different story. Several of these vessels contained traces of flammable liquids, and in some cases, substances that behaved like an explosive. Associate Professor Carney Matheson, who was working with material from the 11th and 12th centuries in Jerusalem, confirmed that some of these containers were used as incendiary devices. Not black powder, but something locally developed. That lines up with historical accounts from the same period. Theophanes described Greek fire burning through enemy ships during the sieges of Constantinople. Anna Komnena wrote about flames launched from tubes that water couldn't extinguish. What these ceramic vessels suggest is simple, and honestly, a bit unsettling. That same kind of fire wasn't limited to large machines anymore. It could be carried. Some of these containers were sealed with resin, likely to keep the contents stable. Once thrown, they would shatter on impact, releasing whatever was inside. Fire, light, and noise, all at close range. Number 2. The first odometer. An odometer is just the thing that tells you how far you've traveled. It sits on a car dashboard, counting miles, and most people never think twice about it. But that idea is much older than it looks. Back around 15 BCE, a Roman engineer named Vitruvius described a device that could measure distance automatically. He wrote about it in De Architectura, his detailed work on Roman engineering. The design was built around something very basic, a wheel. Each full rotation of a standard chariot wheel was counted. After 400 rotations, which matched 1 Roman mile, a set of gears would trigger a small stone to drop into a container. That was the record. At the end of a journey, you didn't check a number on a screen. You counted the stones. It sounds almost too simple, but it worked. That kind of system helped the Romans plan roads, measure distances between cities, and keep track of movement across their empire. What's interesting is how that same principle kept showing up later. All right, guys. Now, let's end this with Number 1. Hot tubs and baths. The soothing experience of soaking in a bathtub has pretty deep, ancient roots. So deep that it goes back thousands of years, and long before modern plumbing or even the idea of a bathroom existed. Some of the earliest evidence comes from the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete, around 1700 BCE. Inside the palace of Knossos, archaeologists found bathtubs carved from limestone and terracotta, shaped for seated soaking. These weren't crude pits either. They were carefully designed, often placed in private rooms, likely reserved for the elite. Around the same time, Egyptians were already using water, oils, and simple tubs for both hygiene and therapy. In Persia, a granite bath dating to around 600 BCE, linked to King Phraaordes, shows just how seriously bathing was taken. In many early cases, people heated water by dropping hot stones into wooden or stone tubs, turning them into primitive hot baths. Then came the Romans, who took the idea and pushed it much further. From around 200 BCE to 400 CE, huge bathhouses spread across the empire. These weren't just places to get clean. They had heated floors through the hypocaust system, hot rooms called caldarium, and cold plunges called frigidarium. The Roman baths in England, still standing after nearly 2,000 years, give a clear sense of how advanced this system really was. Elsewhere, traditions kept evolving. In Japan, natural hot springs, or onsen, became central to daily life. In the Islamic world, hammams preserved and refined bathing culture after Rome declined. The tools changed over time, but the reason stayed the same. People always understood the value of warmth, water, and a moment to breathe. So, with it, that's all from us. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you soon.